Three stats, can you help me out?
30 hours.
Yeah. This type of shit you just ride out to.
What is the deal, beautiful people? It's your boy Ramon, Lifestyles Defined. Let's talk about the OnePlus 3. This company's come a long way. I remember when we first were introduced to the OnePlus 1, the thing that, there were a few things actually that really made it stand out, but the very first thing was the bang for the buck you were getting with this phone. And it was just like crazy specs. It was a beautiful design, a very unique design with that sandstone at the back. And the price was like, wow, really? And then they even went ahead and made it exclusive, right? And we all know if you want something to sell by the boatloads or to become this unicorn, you make it exclusive. People start to wild out and lose their minds when they can't get their hands on it. So yeah, that I think the invite system eventually overshadowed the phone and everything it had to offer, and it was really a tragedy, right? Because this phone was so dope, and at that time a lot of the OEMs were really just doing the same through and through, and these guys really found a way to shake it up. Well, too bad they ruined it with the invite system. The OnePlus 2 was sort of more of the same, great spec, great bang for the buck, but they still had the silly invite system. And then on top of that, they were missing, it was NFC, and then I think people were bitching and moaning about the screen resolution. Now, fast forward, here we are with the OnePlus 3, and they're back again with that ironic mantra of never settle. And this time around, I think they made some very good choices through and through, and I really like what I saw here. So first is the design. Let me say the design, I think, to me, it looks like a very safe design. It's not ugly by any means. In fact, it looks like an HTC 10 to me. Very similar. A cross between the HTC 10 and sort of like the iPhone. And it's very hard it's difficult to understand for people who go to school for this type of stuff, design language. You know, there are time periods, and in all of these time periods, things sort of look the same. Even when you go back to 20, 30 years ago, all the cars look the same, and people are like, why is that? It's just a thing. People sort of play off of each other. They adopt certain design languages that or cues that now become the standard going forward, and they build off of each other, and because of that, you get things that look very similar to each other. And I think that's where we are. That's replicated in the smartphone world today. Everything sort of looks the same, right? And it's really hard to be unique, to be different. But these guys are doing a good job here. The phone's super thin. I really like the design. It's got a camera hump on the back, but it's not too bad. And I really like that silent switch on the side. In fact, I wish there was a way, from when I can tell, they had it on the OnePlus 2, and there was no real way to to repurpose that switch into something different. I suppose if you root it and put a ROM on it, I'm sure they had a bunch of that stuff, but out of the box, no. So yeah, the design is dope. In terms of specs, this guy comes with a 5.5 1080p display, and I don't have much beef with the 5.5 inch display. I think that's a good size. I prefer something a little bigger, but whatever. The 1080p is definitely cause for conversation, because in today's world, the standard is sort of a quad HD display, and here are these guys making the decision to go with 1080p, and HTC stuck around that for a while. And here we are. So I wouldn't say it's a negative. I'm gonna throw a curveball on that later. But in terms of the CPU, you get the Snapdragon 820. It's of course a quad core processor, and that is pretty much the processor that's found on all flagships in today's world. You have it's paired with the Adreno 530, so you know this thing's capable of some really good graphics. Now, here's where I think the 1080p comes in, right? The Adreno 530 and coupled with the Snapdragon 820 in today's smartphone market is responsible for pushing most, if not all, of the quad HD displays. So it is a very capable union of processor and GPU, and they have no problem. You know, you look at the Galaxies, you look at the Nexus, you look at this, you look at that. None of these phones have problems with Quad HD. But when the processor and the GPU is working a lot less hard, or a lot less harder, you can expect to see some very real gains, especially not only in the performance, but in your battery performance. More on that later. This guy comes in with 6 gigs of RAM. God damn, 6 gigabytes of LPDDR4, whatever that means. It's 2 more than the standard on the market. Good for them. It's got 64 gigs of what they're calling UFS 2.0 memory or storage. So it's super fast storage. And again, you see a really dope union here with the 6 gigs of RAM and that 64 gigabytes of super fast storage, and that gives you a hell of a appearance. So you can see here there's seemingly a lot of really smart choices made when talking about this phone and the performance. And of course there's NFC. Crowd goes wild. So it's got a USB 2.0 Type-C charger, and that's always welcome. It's got an audio jack, especially when a lot of phones now getting so thin that they are looking at you, Moto. They took out the 3.5 jack, and you got to use a Type-C adapter to get your headphones. OnePlus 3 still got it in there, and when it comes down to the battery, you've got a 3,000 milliamp battery. Now, not as big as we would like to see it, especially given the fact that the phone is still so thin. And it's one of the thinnest phones reportedly on the market. I've seen the side-by-side comparisons with a lot of the stuff out there. It's pretty thin. Now, here's another interesting choice, right? Sure, you get that thin design, and a lot of us will engage in a conversation where we would happily give up super thinness for more battery life. But they got this thing called dash charging, and it can get up to like 70% of the battery life in like half an hour. That's wild. So it's sort of like one of the reasons I fell in love with the Galaxy S6 Edge when I had it. But I quickly went to shit because the phone was chewing through the battery just as fast as I could charge it. Hopefully not the case here. So yeah, I feel like that rounds off the hardware. Pretty dope. In terms of the operating system, this was another one of those things that sort of gave the OnePlus devices a character. They used to work with CyanogenMod, and they were sort of the official phone for CyanogenMod, and that was back when people thought CyanogenMod would become this whole big thing, or Cyanogen in general would become this whole big thing, and they would use the OnePlus as the platform to branch out and be their own OEM, yada yada yada. It never happened, never materialized, and OnePlus adapted the Oxygen OS, but it has a lot of the same concepts behind it. Very light on the skin, very heavy on the customization, very dope, very easy to use. This is what we see here. Now, coming to my favorite part of any device is, of course, the camera, and I really like what they've done here. So it's a 16 megapixel shooter with optical image stabilization and what they're calling EIS, which is also electronic image stabilization. I'm not sure I've ever played with that. I don't know what that's about, but they got things like auto HDR, dynamic denoise, which pretty much reduces the noise or the grain in your low light images. They got manual controls up the wazoo. I think it's dope. And it also shoots RAW. That's always a plus, right? A phone camera that shoots RAW. A shout out for Apple for actually pushing that through on iOS 10. I'm pretty sure a lot of people will be happy there. But I don't know what the camera performs like. Of course, I got to get it in my hand to really see what that's like. But all in all, I think the bang for the buck factor is alive and well with the OnePlus 3. I think the mantra of never settle is at its strongest with the OnePlus 3. Never mind the 1080p display. Some people would say that's a downside. I think it's a byproduct of a well thought out phone and a well put together piece of technology where they're not just throwing everything in the kitchen sink. They're sort of pairing things together where it makes sense. The OS is very, it's tastefully done, especially in a sea of Android devices, and we know what that could look like. I really like what I see here. There's a few questions to be seen. You know, the performance of this phone is undoubtedly going to be killer with 6 gigs of RAM and only, you know, a processor not working hard to push a QHD display. I think it's going to do exceptionally well. What remains to be seen is, will this operating system slow down like most Android phones that I've seen? That's one. Will the battery stand the test of time? Will that 1080p again lend to the longevity of the battery? We don't know. What is the camera capable of? It looks really nice on paper, but again, I gotta get that in my hands. You guys know we go ham on the Aperture episodes, and yeah, I really think it's dope. And all of that put together for $400, this thing is damn near going toe to toe with the Nexus. I really like where this phone stands. Even when the new Nexus phones come out, be it from HTC or another Huawei, or, you know, we got some discussions on who's doing what there. We're gonna see 2 Nexuses again, yada yada yada. This phone is still gonna be relevant, and relevant in a good way. And my number one thing that I really love about this phone, no more dumbass invite system. You could just go to the site, put your $400 on the table, and get your silver or gold phone. I'm with that. Good job, OnePlus. Welcome back. It's your boy Ramon. I'm out of here. Peace.
From the deep forest into the sun.